Yeah, no,
Okay.
I'm familiar with those.
Shall we start? In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. So, Holy Spirit, come and guide us. Fill us with your wisdom, your love of all good things, and help us to have an open, generous heart, that we have a heart that is breathing and pumping and living, and not a heart that's narrow and constrained, but a heart that truly breathes and pumps blood through our body, but also life into us and to around us, and that we be living beings that are open and receptive to all the good things that you have in store for us, and that we may be able to relish in those things and savor them and appreciate them for all they are worth. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
So to continue, I guess I'll recap a little bit. I had mentioned that talked about awesomeness. This is a kind of a word that's come up out of a friend in the Philippines. As a family, and a friend after an evening dinner once, he said, "Oh, I'm awesome," and then that kind of took me off on saying, "Well, at first I was kind of a bit shocked because, it's not everybody that just says, 'Oh, I'm awesome.' And then it was like, you just said it. Okay, you're awesome. Yeah, well, okay, whatever you want. I mean, be it. But anyways, it did make me, I thought about that, and I was thinking, well, maybe there's something to that. Maybe we don't think we're awesome enough, and we should think that we are more awesome in the eyes of God. And awesome called, but we're awesome, but we're called to awesomeness. We're called to do, and not necessarily just the great, things that bring a lot of attention. No, it's just we're called to live a life that's full with God, and full in that intimacy with God, and full of and making good and wise decisions in our lives. So and then I mentioned coming back to Fort Bragg. I was at Santa Rosa that time, and in the Barnes and Noble, and here's this book. It's called "You Are a Badass" and how to assume your awesomeness. And so, and I'm reading that and about some of the principles that were there. So one of the principles that we did yesterday was living in the present moment. And then another one of the principles, which I'd like to go over today, is about generosity and gratitude. So what about having, I think they go together, actually. I think that if we have a spirit of gratitude in our hearts, then we are also generous. And I think if we're generous with ourselves, I think there are two things that kind of go together. And so I'd like to talk about that theme today. And I'd like to begin by a couple of stories, because for me, these are kind of, I guess they're kind of stories. I think of them as kind of gifts from God, I guess, is in its own way a generosity from God. But I think you'll find it interesting in the way that this way of God's way of being generous. He's good, and he's good in so many ways, but it's also interesting good in how he enlightens us, how he enlightens us at certain moments. And so the first story is that when I was back in the monastery in France, I had, I guess I still do, but a problem, a sleep problem in general, but a specific problem with sleep apnea. And so to treat that, there was a local hospital. My brothers called it the sleep hospital, at least one of them, that, you have to go to the hospital to sleep. Okay, well, tough, dude. And actually it was even more it was even tougher, because it was actually in a chateau that was built in the 1800s that sat on this kind of hilltop that looked out to the mountains in the Chartreuse. So it was like this chateau that had been built there, and it had two wings on it that were modern, but the original, and actually for the sleep analysis, I was actually in the original Chateau Park. And it was actually a tuberculosis hospital. I mean, or at least it was more for the people, because tuberculosis is so contagious. It was like the second level of people, because you might be a caretaker, but you're affected by that. But then you would also have to be careful about being kind of quarantined yourself. So it's kind of the second level. But that, because it was already doing that, it moved into a hospital that specialized on respiratory diseases. And so that's where I would go about at least once a year for a sleep analysis. And so I go there, and the first time I was there, I go in, and so I check in, and they take you to your room, and then there's like it's not like you really, they have an eating hall, because it's, most people are mobile and they can get around. It's not really like they're bedridden or something. But so I go down to the eating hall for the meal, and so I'm sitting there eating and trying to kind of just follow along the conversation. I mean, it's harder. I speak fluent French, but if French conversation, when other people are talking, it's kind of harder to follow along. And sitting at the table, I just remember another guy kind of at the other end of the table maybe 8 or 10. He was sitting there, and he was kind of the life of the party, just cracking jokes right and left. And then I noticed that he had this like dragon tattoo going around his neck, and so this was kind of like, even this was like back maybe 15 years ago. So even today that might be a little more usual, but even then it was kind of, wow, that's a little unusual. And so the thing was as well, when I checked in, I mean, I put on my kind of sweatsuit or something like that, because normally the monks, we wear habits, and so when I came to the place, I was in my monastic habit, but then I got in the room, got into my sweats, and I was down at the table and like that. And so, but I was just actually there, and I was thinking there, I was sitting there thinking, well, what, I'm a monk, but I'm also a Catholic priest. So what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to be a witness of Christ here, a witness of what, this is a place that maybe seems people are talking about all this other things, and this guy's cracking these jokes, and I don't know, it's just like all, these kind of things are spinning around me. Well, how can I be, what would be my role as a Catholic priest here? What kind of witness, what would I do in that situation? So I was kind of in my mind. And so we finished dinner. And so I'm leaving. And so you come out of it's nicely arranged, there's the eating hall. And then there's kind of like, you go through, there's windows on one side, and there's kind of like a sitting area. And I think in the morning it's a coffee bar there. So it's kind of like a sitting area, and there's kind of like a window sills there that you can sit in, window bays there to sit in. And so I'm walking out, and guess who's there? Well, the same guy is there with two other guys. And they kind of look at me, and then they kind of, oh, come over. And the guy says, hey, yeah, are you a monk of Tamier? Which Tamier is another. I was at the Grande Chartreuse. Tamier was a Trappist abbey up in Savoie. And he says, well, no, I'm from the Grande Chartreuse. He says, oh wow, that's cool. I go up to Tamier every month for a religious. And yeah, the other guy, oh yeah, I've always been interested in the monastic life myself. And oh yeah, do you know so and so? They knew all this stuff about the monastic life. And I was thinking like these were like I thought they were like radical, I don't know, people that were Satanists or something like that. And, it's like, yeah, and I was thinking about how am I going to be so it's like in your face, dude. It's like, I thought that, I take that as a gift from God. It's just like, don't judge by the cover, don't assume the negative when these things can happen. And so I it was just kind of like, wow. And that's something I think it's been a good lesson is always kind of check your judgment, kind of, don't go to the negative right away or assume the opposition in that sense. And so then it happened a few years later, that was in 2016. I was visiting my nephews. I had one nephew in Boston and one nephew in New York. He lived down by Brooklyn, and then he worked at this restaurant bar on Columbus Circle. Columbus Circle's by Central Park, and I think it's called the Mare, but it's a really kind of a high end. He's a budding actor, and as a budding actor, you end up being mostly a waiter and bartender. And so he kind of climbed the ranks as a bartender. So this is a pretty swing place. I mean, he was telling me about all the celebrities, and I think he served Hillary Clinton once, you know, and it was like he, but so yeah. But well, also he said that Jeff Bridges came in, and you know, it's typically the dude, you know, hey, you know, come one of those that Bush, that's the Bush. He goes, Bush Mills, yeah, give me a Bush Mills. You know, it's like it's just pretty important. So, but anyway, so he's working there, and so just I visiting the town, you know, just to go see where he's working, have a drink, and so I go into this nice restaurant bar, and so I was sitting at the bar, and he's giving me drinks, introducing me to the people that are there, you know, and so well, sure enough, because there's a couple that comes in, and they're like, you know, especially the lady, she's dressed to the nines. I mean, I think they're going to some play or opera or something, you know, and they're all dressed up, and they're really, and they sit down beside me, and then they order the ink squid risotto, you know, and the squid ink risotto, and actually, you know, it's pretty good. I got a plate of it. It was really good, but so we're sitting and talking. I mean, sure enough, they're sitting there, and so inevitably they were talking about, you know, each other, and then what, you know, inevitably you can say, well, what do you do? And I'm sure that's going, well, yeah, I was a monk in France for 28 years, you know. So I ended up finally, you know, fessing up and saying, yeah, I was a monk in France for 28 years. And then this lady, like out of nowhere, comes. He says, you know, I go down to my daughter's church in New Jersey, but that's just too wild and rambunctious. You know, they just sing all the time, and they're always up and about. I like the Episcopalian church around the church. It's just more cold, you know. Again, it's just another one of these things in your face. Where here I assume that these were the, you know, the most secular sort of non-religious people in the world, and it's just, you know. So again, it's just those things, and I think that that's beautiful. And again, to receive those things, and like I say, I receive them as gifts from God. I receive them as something that here, you know, it's not to assume the negative, not to assume opposition, but to be open. And so and again, it's like I saw that. I mean, now we've been wearing masks for a while, but I mean, before I saw that, it was a study done where they found that if you smile to someone, there's like a 70% chance that someone will smile back to you. I mean, it's like literally contagious, you know. So there's just a reaction. If you smile to someone, they will smile to you. And so there is there's that openness in that sense. And likewise, but it does kind of help me to think as well about, you know, in situations. I think if we go into a situation like an aggressive way, or you know, like, I mean, maybe, you know, maybe think about before going to the DMV, you know, I check, you know, I mean, I could get frustrated, impatient, and, you know, etc. here, but it's not going to help the situation, you know. I mean, just kind of put that in check, and just kind of take a few deep breaths, and just really just say, okay, this is going to be, you know, just be patient here, and don't get frustrated, don't get angry with this, because again, if our own tension, I think our own tension that comes across will create tension in another person. So it goes back to that thing about what you give is what you get. You know, if you're putting out vibes that are tense or negative or aggressive, I think that naturally it comes back. But if you're putting out vibes that are warm and peaceful, and I think that will come back. And again, it doesn't mean, I mean, I think there's also things, I mean, it doesn't mean to be phony. I mean, because I think there are people that can be kind of phony about that, and just wanting to be super nice and super cheerful, when really it's kind of like they're just kind of masking something else, you know. And so it should be sincere, and it should be, you know, measured. But I think there is something about, from our own peaceful place in our heart and our own peace, that comes out and radiates. So again, in that sense of what we give is what we get. So I think there's something relational, and in that, and that's what I think. There's a lot to be said about, you know, prayer as relation. How do we relate to ourselves? How do we relate to others? How do we relate to the world around us? Are those relations good and healthy? Are those things are we building on them? Are they fragmented? Are they fractured? Are they wounded, or things like that? That's gonna, I think it's gonna hold us back. In the little blurb that I wrote on this, I talked about, that is about the life of prayer is about having that sense of unity within us, to be good with ourselves, to be good and say, well, I'm forgiven and I forgive. I can let go of the past. I know that I have a God who loves me. I can abandon, the future to him. I don't have to worry about the future. I can savor the present moment. So there is a certain sense of unity already in that. We can say, well, we have, I hopefully I foster peace around me. I foster good relations around me. So that's the second degree. Hopefully also then I can say, well, I can appreciate, I'm coming from a base that's solid there. I'm solid within myself. So when I approach the world around me, it's not like I'm just preoccupied by anger issues or bitterness or resentfulness or anxiety or anguish. I'm not just always devoured by those things. I can enjoy the world. I can appreciate the world as it is. And so I'm not held back. I'm not inhibited in that way. I can be open to appreciating all that God can give me. And then I think at that level, then we're called to see the world around us and see creation as God's gift to us. And we see that as this is a gift. This is something that he is giving us to at this very moment. He's giving us to us here and now at this moment. And to really appreciate that for all it's worth. And then that should create a spirit of praise in us. We want to praise God and praise the Lord for this beautiful moment that we have with him and that we have here and now, and just to rejoice in that moment. So you see how there's a coherence in all that. It's kind of, they're interrelated. And so again, like I say, it's about how do we live our lives affects our prayer life, and our prayer life. So if we're living in a peaceful place in our hearts and our minds, if we're living if our thoughts are of kindness and gentleness, and if we then that helps us to be gentle with ourselves and gentle with others, gentle with God. We're called to be that. I think if the violent person is really, they're not only violent with others, I think they're violent with themselves. And I don't want to be judgmental. I don't want to judge why they're like that. But I think there's just something about, if a person, they may seem outwardly violent, they may be outwardly violent, but I think there's also an internal violence going on there as well. So it's not just about the way they're treating other people. They're also, treating themselves harshly. And that's not you think they, I mean, you think people might learn from that? I mean, you think they might learn and say, well, hey, I'm beating myself up, I'm beating other people up. And maybe there are moments when they just say, hey, they hit bottom, where they just say, hey, I'm not doing myself any good. I'm not doing anybody else. And I'm just a total mess. And so then they open, and they just have to make that, abandon. And that's really why the step programs come in, where they say they're going through that about, recognizing they have a higher power, and recognizing that there's something greater than themselves, recognizing that they need this help, the help of others, recognizing that they need to put an order in their life and take inventory, that they need to ask forgiveness, and all those great steps that they go through. But that's where they really recognize that they need it, and that their life has hit bottom and is a mess. But we go through life kind of someplace in between. But I think it's beautiful for us to see what's available for us, what's available here. And I just would like to, hope that you all might see something of that universe of prayer, that universe of living in a prayerful state, of really being able to appreciate the glory of God when you see the beauty around you, to appreciate the glory of God when you see the smile of another person, to appreciate so many good things that are there, and to make the most of them. And I think that involves being gracious, that involves having a spirit of gratitude, but it also, I think, that generosity that comes from our own strength. that comes when we are strong in ourselves. I think we can be generous when we are strong. And again, that goes back to say, understanding that yes, you matter before God. Yes, you are awesome in God's eyes. Yes, your strength comes from Him. And so because I am strong, I can be generous. I can be open. I don't have to be closed in and defensive, because my strength from God, He comes from God, and He's going to be there to support me, to uphold me, and to help me in this life. So, I see. I mean, for me, all these things are interrelated. You see, all these things, they work together for the good. They all work together for the good. They're kind of chained in one to the other. And so, and then again, it's the other direction is the downward. I mean, or the opposite direction of where we have a hard time getting over maybe bitterness or resentment, or had difficult things in our lives, the challenges that are really hard for us to put behind us. We have things that are anxieties. Maybe we've had bad experiences in the past, and we don't want those to repeat, and so we're cautious about the future, and so we withhold. And so there's so many things there that can withhold us. And again, I think it's not about being imprudent in our lives. It's not about making imprudent choices, but I think there is something, again, it goes back, what are the fruits of our thoughts? What are the fruits of our choices? And like I mentioned yesterday, those fruits of the Spirit: peace, joy, patience, kindness, goodness, self-mastery. And so the things that lead us in that direction, I think we can have confidence with, and we can go for it and make the best of it. But if they're causing trouble in our life, if they're causing difficulty, then those are things we need to avoid. So that's basically what. I kind of want to leave space open, because we've had really good discussions the last couple of days that have been really beneficial. So I'll leave space for that. That's basically the premises of what I wanted to say today. But is anything coming up with your minds? I see kind of your.
Oh yeah, I'm sitting. I know everything you said was just so spot on, and I just think if we could try to lead by example and come from a position of love, as much as possible. And I'm just thinking of all these situations where people have almost made fun or tried to get my goat or something because they know I'm Catholic.
Oh yeah.
In certain circles.
Uh-huh.
And if I just remained undefensive, but kept on saying what I was saying or whatever, I've had people surprised that I'm Catholic. And I'm also, I'm just gonna put it out there, I'm also conservative, but I have so many diverse friends I don't even want to label people, but then they're surprised, they find out, oh my God, you're a conservative Catholic, but I have gay friends, I don't care. I love everybody. But it's interesting. My point is how people label and judge and presume.
Yeah.
And they haven't even really met you, or you haven't had a conversation with them. And so if we can just try to have an open mind and be loving and forgiving, and sometimes it's not easy, but
and I think that's what I tried to bring out. That's what I tried last Sunday, was that seeing the texture of people, seeing individuals, and not going too quickly to a label, because it may be a little more, you can easily label and group people, but maybe it's a little more subtle, the differences, or maybe you see why they appreciate certain things and why that value is there. But I think there's more, see the person before the idea or the ideology, and just think this is here as a person, and they have their own history, their own experiences, and they've come from someplace in their life. And so to appreciate that story of what's there, and appreciate that, rather than going right to a label or a category.
And then when you get to know somebody, you might find out that they've had relationship problems or abuse or drug problems or alcohol problems.
Right.
And they would be surprised to know that about.
Right. And so that's the whole story. That's why I say that's the story of the person. You don't know what they've gone through, their difficulties, or what their values are, also the good things that maybe, a lot of people, it's not for bad reasons they support something, it's for good things that they see as good. And so we can't often appreciate, and we might say, oh, well, yeah, but there's other things that aren't so good. Well, okay, but yeah, but I mean, we can appreciate the good that other people appreciate, I think. And so, yeah, and so that's on a social level, and I think that, yeah, that's pertinent today, where we do these questions come up and in our lives, and yeah, and so I mean that's like the social level, and then again, how do we see those individuals, as children of God? See, there's always a child of God, there's always the son and daughter of the Father, and how do we, we say that's someone who matters, that's someone who's precious to the Father, even though I don't get their ideas, I don't care who they are, but hey, that's still, that's still yeah. And so there's still a human being, and I don't, yeah, so I don't know if we talked about that last night, but there is, thinking about how it is sad that someone may really just go so far against their, I mean, I'm talking about somebody, again, what we don't know what the roots are there, and so you're not judging, but someone who has acted against their conscience. I mean, like violent crime, just committed violent crimes to the point where their conscience is really not, they're acting in a way that's really more it's brutality, really, and it's not. So, I mean, again, we would hope that the mercy and the grace there would touch that soul, that person, but you never can say that's not a human being. I mean, even though their conscience is so, I mean, this idea that they're ruled by just pure brutality rather than any sense of right and wrong, but still that is a human being, that still is a child of God, that is still somebody that's called that Christ died for, that's still, and that can be more, and sometimes it's just a total flip. They can go from being the most violent criminal to the greatest, I mean, I'll say saint in the sense of, I mean, like sort of like Halo saint, but I'm just saying that they can actually understand the importance of certain things. I mean, they can even actually, that flip can be so great because they're going from space that's so down in the depths of what the darkness or the least of humanity, that they can go to the most of humanity. I mean, they can actually, I mean, because they can appreciate so much more things in their life because they see the gift of life. That's the whole paradox. Jesus talks so much about these paradoxes. Why are the poor blessed? Why are we the meek blessed? Why are these things? Because I mean, we see the gift of things that are received when someone has maybe been in that situation, and that real dark, I mean, I'd say darkness or that violent life. And then they see the gift of life itself, and they can even appreciate it so much more than a lot of people who've kind of gone in the middle way of have kind of had some bumps and bruises, but also had some good effects of God's blessings in their lives. So that's also something that is really is beautiful, and that's something it's just our. That's why I think we have such a great God. That's why I think our God is so great, is because he takes that, he does a total flip on these things, and that's what I think it's so great about him. So, any other ideas about generosity, gratitude, graciousness, gift?
Well, I just thought we all are awesomely made by God. Each one of us were born. We were wonderfully made in the womb, each one of us, for past, present, and future, which is hard for me to understand, that God loves so perfectly every person that has ever been conceived. But we come with this concupiscence to sin, with our own woundedness, because we live in this world. And I think just trying to love people, seeing them with the eyes of God and their woundedness, because we all are, one way or another. We've had our own journeys in this life, but in the end, God's grace is the only thing that really can change anybody or anything, and you need to be open to that. And some people just in their mindset or not. I mean, coming to California, I'm also Republican, rather traditional, and cradle Catholic, and so being in California is just
little
Where are
different.
you from?
Texas
Okay.
originally, but Florida,
Mhm.
DeSantis.
Yeah.
No, Trump country kind of. the same.
Okay.
And, you know, I'm very much one way of thinking, but I love everybody. I mean, I can respect people who think different than I do. I hope
Those people.
but I'd like for them to respect what I feel also. Respect with generosity and kindness. We can agree to disagree on this. In the end, we're going to know the truth.
Yeah.
And what is truth? I mean, I feel truth is Jesus Christ. So, but not everybody believes in that same truth. So it's, but we need to live that with kindness and generosity. And when someone, what are we called, to love our enemies, especially the ones who treat you bad? And that's the hardest thing to do, to be able to be really kind when someone, in a sense, spits in your face. And we're supposed to turn the other cheek. And
and I think there's actually, I mean, this is, I mean, even on a, I remember as in Carthusians and monks, I mean, you kind of see that really we're almost called to something that's higher. I mean, we're called to a higher level that neither, a lot of times parties end up having certain values that are rock solid, but also it's kind of transcending that. I mean, we're saying that neither one of them really satisfies everything that we would want as a Christian. So there's always something that's lacking there. But also I think it goes back, you know, we're talking about today about generosity, about the gift, just to appreciate some of the basic things in life. Do we appreciate the gift of life? Do we appreciate so many, just to be here alive, to live another day, to share this moment, to have fresh air, so I mean, I think that's there's a beauty in that simplicity. I guess it's, I mean, I don't know how the word humility, I don't know if that comes off to you as something like being beaten down into being humble, but I mean, I just think there is something about in the sense of, I guess if I'm really humble, then I'm really appreciating so many of the basic things of life. You know, I'm not taking these things for granted, but and it's not like I feel like that it's again, it's not like this is some duty, like, you know, eat all your vegetables because you know you're not appreciating your food or something like that. But it just seems like that coming from a heart that is just appreciating so many of the basic things in life, and just and appreciating another day, another hour, another minute, the air we breathe, the place we are, just to appreciate so many of the basic things and just to be appreciative of those. I think there's a sense of generosity, and there's a sense of that being a gift. You know, that's already a gift that we're, and if we're not appreciating it, then we're not receiving that gift. I mean, I don't know, is that something about not wanting to receive the God? I mean, that's kind of like a question of, you know, we're called, I guess I'd say we're called to receive the gift that God gives us at each moment, and we see each moment as a gift that God is giving us. And so how am I seeing this as a gift? And so how am I understanding that? I mean, there are moments that are more agreeable, and so it's easier to see that as a gift. There are moments that are disagreeable, and so how are we able to see those as a gift as well, but just kind of changing our perspectives a little, trying to take another angle on it, and also that may be tied in with our expectations. You know, I mean, I guess it goes back, I gave the first example Tuesday from the David Foster Wallace in his talk, and talking about to the young people, the graduates at Kenyon College, and then saying, well, you're going to be, you know, life isn't going to be all hunky-dory. You're actually going to have maybe more constraints on your life now that you're in the real world. And so you're going to be, you know, you're going to come home from work, and you got to get dinner, and here you're in a grocery store, and a lot of other people are buying their food. And so again, what's your expectation when you go in the grocery store? So if you go in and you think, I'm just going to go get X, Y, and Z things, and I'm going to be out in 5 minutes, and you know, it's been 15 minutes, well, then that's your expectation. But if you go in thinking, no, I'm going to be probably spending an hour here, and it's only 20 minutes, well, then it's kind of a good thing. It kind of depends on what our expectation is, but also what do we do in the dead time? I mean, so we are in the shopping line. Are we going to take that as a moment to pray for all the other people there. We take that a moment to just to pray for the other people in the grocery store, pray for the people that are working there, the cashier or whatever. You know, is that going to be a moment that we're going to take advantage of, or are we just going to sit there and be complaining about having to wait and seeing the 100 items in the cart that's in front of us? And you know, how are we going to see that? Are we going to see that, oh, there's 100 hours, that's going to be another 5 or 10 minutes? Or are we going to say, wow, this family's got all they can eat for a week, wow, isn't that great, they got all this food, and look at this, hey guys, look at this cart, they got all this food, they're going to be eating all week, wow, they're going to be, the kids are going to be full, isn't this great? You know, nobody does that, but why don't we? I mean, you know, I don't know. See, it's just, it's like changing our outlook and appreciating it.
Or like trying to find silver linings and things. I was thinking about that. Even like when really horrible stuff happens, to sit down and go, okay, what's the silver lining? Because, you know, try to be grateful in some really bad situations. And I had some things happen that took me years to find the silver lining in it. But I mean, years.
But maybe is it more precious that when you did find it? I mean, when it may take longer, but when you do find the silver lining, it's all that more precious. It's like the gold at the end of the.
If you can turn that around and like help people get through the same situation, maybe a little better or whatever, or counsel people or something, you know, if they're receptive to it. So
it's so what I mean, I guess that's a good expression, and it's a silver lining. I mean, what is the, and even just not for the, I mean, that's important for the big things, but what about the little things in our life as well? I mean, you know, or maybe is it like, okay, you know, someone cuts us off in the highway, well, are we going to be mad about that? Are we going to say, well, hey, maybe that's a call to pray for that person? Maybe they're whatever, are they in a hurry to get to where they got to go? Are they just mad? Are they just upset with their life? Or they got issues going on? Well, maybe that's we're called to pray for that person, and maybe there's a special reason why we're supposed to pray for that person. Maybe God permitted that because they wanted us to pray for them, you know, maybe. So again, what's our disposition as we take into life? What's our attitude towards the whole thing? How can we turn this all to our own advantage? And I say it's not, and that sounds almost kind of selfish or egoistic, but I don't think it's wrong. I mean, I think in that sense, turning these things, it's a win-win situation. I guess I don't know, I'm kind of a person, my dad, I guess, I grew up born in 1920, went through the Depression in 1929, went through, lived in survival mode, but he always liked the win-win things. How can you win? You know, for him, it was a win-win scenario. And so how can we, is that, you know, how can I turn this to my advantage? It's a win for the other people who I'm praying for. It's a win for me because I'm finding peace in my life. So how can I turn these into win-win situations? Well, Marianne.
You're here. That's great. Better late than never. Absolutely. I try to hang on to Romans 8:28.
It all contributes to good for those who love God. Yeah. God first. Yeah, you got it. Yeah. So it's So we're talking about generosity and gratitude and graciousness. So you know, we thought you were a specialist on that. So we're putting you on this.
I really like that idea of, Hillary said it, you finally find the silver lining, that it's more precious.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you do that, then the next time something bad happens and you think there's going to be a silver lining to this, I just have to wait to see what it is. And that gives you hope.
Right.
Like this is not the end. I mean, I've been through this before, and to remember that, I like that. Thank you, God.
Yeah,
I think that's just a really, there's a gem in there. You have to wait for it.
Yeah, and that's, it does give you hope, because rather than being just devastated by a thing and having nothing that can be redemptive about it, but this maybe gives a sense of, well, there is something that it's not an all loss. There is something that I gained from this that's come out better. I mean,
you know, I have a friend who went through the Vietnam War unscathed, came back to San Francisco and was in a terrible automobile accident and was dragged. And he ended up by being quite crippled and walked with difficulty, had a plate in his head, etc. And he said to me one day, when I don't fall down, I say, thank you, God. And when I fall down, I say, thank you, God. So he had that. Yeah, beautiful.
I wonder if he understood thank you in the same sense. Or I wonder if, what if he, so I can, yeah, so why would, I'm just thinking that to break this down. So if he walks another step, well, he thanks God for every step that he can make. Now, if he falls, he's thanking God, but in that sense, why is he thanking God when he falls?
So for the suffering.
Oh, that he can suffer for
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
Jesus said he can, it's an occasion for him to suffer.
I was gonna say that, yeah, that's
AMG
for the great heart.
But I have this occasion to suffer for you.
Yeah.
I have, yeah, and again, I mean, and there's that sense of generosity at the point of where you are thankful for, and it doesn't, I mean, again, is that kind of morose? Is that kind of, I mean, we don't want to bring on suffering, because I don't think I mean, you can be in a mentality. There are people who never really see the resurrection because they only see the cross. I mean, there are people who just are always into, life is always about it. And they kind of even see themselves as crucified, and that's all they see themselves. So all they see in their life is just, this thing happens to me, and so I'm crucified. This thing's happened, but I'm on the cross with Christ. But you're saying, well, there's this whole other life that's there for you. It's a whole other life. You don't have to see everything just as a sufferance or being everybody's against me, everybody's causing problems, everything in the world's against me, etc. Well, okay, there are some hiccups in life, but it doesn't mean that it's all about that.
You know, I always think when you fell, you can be grateful that you had an opportunity to be prostrate before the Lord, or
That's
an opportunity
yeah.
to be helpless, which is really an amazing thing, to let other people help you. You know, there's a big lesson about that.
That's
one.
interesting. That's a good
Those
take
are
as
things
well.
that I would think of. They're not really about like, oh, I'm a martyr, but they're about what glorious things I can give to others through this. Well, you know, there's people that won't let you help them. I mean, they're like Peter. I always tell him that story. You're not. Where Peter's, said, you're not going to wash my feet. And he said, if you don't, you can't have any part of this. And that's what it's like when people won't let others help them, and they're so stubborn about it.
Or be grateful too.
They're not, they just won't accept help. They're so independent. They don't,
It takes humility.
It does. That's really what it takes.
And I think it's also, it's probably, I mean, I haven't been in that situation too often, but I think it also takes a lot of self-renouncement to be helped. I mean, it does oftentimes to just to let go. I mean, just to let go and abandon, and also maybe have people that, I mean, they're goodwill, but it's not translated really into my better being off. I'm not.
It teaches you just the same spirit of abandon that you're talking about in contemplative
Right, exactly,
prayer, to be able to abandon yourself to another.
Yeah, exactly.
And let yourself be in their hands.
Exactly.
It's good practice for trusting God.
And there's also, and sometimes there's a sacrifice because you, in your own, they're trying to help you, and yet really you're not better off because they're helping you. And you're just kind of, okay, I'm abandoning my will, but I'm abandoning my intelligence as well, because this is just like, I'm really not better off because you did this.
It's only the other person who's getting the gift.
But I guess, I mean, I think as well as that it makes us think as caregivers to really, try to be, attentive to what the person needs or wants, or small things or big, to try to see what they need and want. Even might not make any sense to us, but it's important to them, and to really put ourselves, and not just kind of go into like a fixed paradigm where this is, you do this and that, but no, say, well, what works for you? What's kind of, I mean, it's not, again, I mean, it's a delicate question, because it's the person, for them, I say, oh yeah, give me jelly beans all day. I say, well, no, that's the type of work. I mean, that's not, you need to eat good food. I don't know. It's just, but I think there is something to be, I mean, as a person who's in caregiving, to have, and it's beautiful. I mean, beautiful souls that are very good about helping people. And providing that. And also, I mean, the friend who's has always touched a friend, the nurse, a lifetime nurse in Santa Rosa Memorial Hospital, she ends up a lot of her work, it's not her specialty, but she ends up being basically what used to be called the psych ward, basically. And how, you know, she spends a lot of time praying for people that just, I mean, it's just when she's going between room to room, or just when she's, you know, she's a lot of her, it's really taken on her heart, you know, to pray for the people that are there. So that's beautiful.
You say when we're gentle with ourselves, we'll be gentle with others.
Yes. I think that's very true. I think there's something, I don't think, I mean, there is kind of, in a certain sense of spirituality, it would be, well, people are hard, I mean, harsh with themselves and good with others, but I think there's just a certain sense of being gentle, in the sense of gentle with I think there's a proper sense of being gentle with yourself and gentle with others. Now, it doesn't mean to be, I think there's a distinction between, it doesn't mean necessarily being indulgent in the sense of, I mean, you know, letting yourself, being indulgent in the sense of unhealthy things. I mean, it doesn't mean that you should be lax as far as if there are things that are unhealthy for you, and just to be lax towards those things and be indulgent in permitting them because you're soft on yourself. I don't think it's quite that. I just think there's a sense of being gentle with yourself and your own thoughts and your emotions. And then I think that's going to be translated into be gentle with others. So if you are harsh or violent with yourself, or down on yourself, or if you beat up yourself, you know, for things, it's not, I think there is a good sense of being gentle with yourself.
Isn't it love your neighbor as you love yourself? Well, if you don't love yourself, you can't love your neighbor.
Yeah,
And
because
that's so true.
Yeah, and often it's just thought about loving your neighbor in the sense that loving your neighbor is forgetting that you should love yourself as well. So,
Well, when you know you're awesome.
Once I get that.
now
down.
you're getting it. Now you're getting it.
You know, crummy worm, it's really hard to treat other people well if you
Yeah,
don't,
Yeah.
if you don't feel healthy in yourself.
Exactly.
It's hard to be
Yeah.
healthy to other people.
exactly.
I think hurting people hurt
Mhm,
other people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hurt people hurt other people. Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
exactly
So
right.
we
Yes.
just- yeah.
And so you need to pray when someone hurts them.
Yeah,
Hurts
you
you
can hear
because
from
they're
them, yes.
hurting.
That's a good point.
Exactly.
That's
And
a
we
very
always
good
see we only see the exterior, but we don't see the interior. And again, it's like, you know, the same thing about being, you know, violent. I mean, a violent person, they're probably violent with themselves, and it doesn't justify it, but I'm just saying
Right.
hurt person hurts others. Yeah. So we, but we should
Right.
also pray for their healing, interior healing. And yeah, and it's not, and I guess, I mean, how do we go out? It's just a question. I mean, I think, I think I would say the people here, basically, I think we got it kind of together. I mean, we're here, we're in church, we have a faith. I think we kind of got together. But what about the people who are struggling? You know, what about the people who are struggling in this life, in this world, and maybe the people that you know, maybe also it's not just, I'm not trying to be sanctimonious here, but what about people, maybe there's relationships are difficult. So relationships, not only relationships with God, relationships with their parents, relationships with others, you know, what about people, and maybe they do turn to other stimulants to make up for that, you know, to make up for that, or to mask that, or just to escape that. So, I mean, you know, that's also something that, I guess, how do we be a support for them in a healthy sense, you know, and how can we do that not with a superiority complex, but with just a sense of feeling for someone, or feeling for what, I guess, for where they are in their situation.
What did St. Augustine say? Our souls are restless until they
Rest in God.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I think these people that are hurting have like a hole in their soul that only God can fill,
Mhm.
but they're using
Yeah.
any other thing.
Well,
brings
right.
us up.
Well, but the thing is also,
Insanity.
but a lot of times the God that they understand, maybe there hasn't been either. I mean, it's not the God we understand.
Yeah.
And also, maybe there's a reason for that as well. I mean, it may or may not be. Maybe it's by negligence on their part, but also could be that people haven't given a good witness to God. So, you know, it's also, it's not the true God that they're rejecting. It's the image of God that they have. That's can sometimes even be a monster, you know, that's in their mind. I mean, that's what always that struck me. My dad, who went through AA for 30 years. I mean, he lived 30 years of sobriety before he died, and but you know, he'd come home, he'd say, Robbie, you wouldn't imagine the monster that these people have in their head, and that God is for them a monster. You know, it's a deformed image of God that they've got, because who knows, maybe it comes from their parents, maybe it comes from different situations, maybe whatever, but society, but it's just so that's, but it's a lot of healing in relationships, a lot of healing that what can we be? And maybe it's just on a very basic human level. What can we do for other people on the most human level? I mean, we have to reach the human level before we can reach a spiritual level, but just to what can we be there for people?
Well, Sandra would be better to speak to it than I would, but the Quakers have a saying, or whatever they call it, that of God, or the spark of God is in every human being. And that's where you try to reach that part of God in every person. And that's what people need. You know, everyone needs for that to be recognized. Their human dignity or self or whatever. I mean, that's what everybody wants, right? Everybody wants to be recognized as an individual and a loved person. And that's how we can show God to other people and show Jesus to other people, because that's how he looks at us.
I think also that the idea of being with people on a human level to find out what it is they need, and perhaps you can do, and then you become friends, and then it's easier, much easier to get that little spiritual.
Exactly.
They need that first, I think.
I think you're right. That's
What are their interests? I mean, healthy interests. What are the healthy interests of the person? What are their activities? I mean, you don't want to encourage unhealthy interests. And if it's all about drugs or something, you don't want to encourage that, but what are the healthy interests?
It sometimes can be a very simple thing, though, that you see, you note in this person something they need, and you can sort of offer that, and that makes a big difference.
Or like you always talk, when you talk to homeless people, instead of just pretending that they're not there.
I engage.
Smile.
So Father, even what you were saying about your father, like at 12-stepping, they've even had to change it where it said, you know, whoever you perceive he or she to be in the meetings, because people have such a knee-jerk reaction to Christianity or God or anything. So but they gotta have the higher power. You gotta
it's something greater than yourself, is to get out of self, something that might be just it's just the first
25 years ago, so
but it's the first step. And then there was a famous story where a guy who was mad at God, and they just said, and his mentor, you know, he says, well, just talk to God. So I can't talk to God, I'll just say anything, you know. So, and he would just go out, I mean, he would curse God, you know. That was the first thing, was just cursing God and all kinds of, but he noticed that after a couple of weeks his language got a little softer, and then after about a month or 6 weeks it was actually having a regular conversation with God. And so it went through Trevor, you know. So, and again, it goes back to like what I was saying yesterday about the couples, you know, the couples who quarrel, well, at least they are, it matters to each other, so engaging. Whereas if people just are totally indifferent to one another and just not, and then it's dead, really. And so here, just the fact, even if it's just like cursing God, at least it's something, an expression that there's kind of some fragment of hope that you just, and of course, I mean, it's, I guess, has to be sincere. It can't just be one-offs, and just every time, you know, I guess a person could just, I mean, because just every time that something comes up, they curse God because, I don't know, they stubbed their toe, or I don't know, they you know, the gas prices went up or whatever. I don't know, just with everything that comes, and they're just always, you know, but it has to be a conversation. But I think if they, to get it out, to at least to want to work on that and say, well, I want to get this out, you know, get this out there. This is what I have against you, God, and this is what
Isn't there some famous comedian or somebody that said, how can you be so angry at something if it doesn't exist? So.
Yeah.
People that didn't believe
yeah.
God.
That's true.
Yeah, well, how
That's-
can you be
that's
so
true.
mad if it's,
Mhm.
you know, it?
Yeah.
And God can take it.
Yeah, yeah.
He can. I mean, if
Yeah.
that's what you're feeling, at least it's true in its
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah, yeah, true sentiment.
True
yeah,
communication, it may
just-
not be the best, but
just to
that's the
get-
only way they can communicate
yeah,
with
to
God
get
right
it
now,
out.
the anger, and God can
Yeah,
he'll
yeah.
change that anger possibly.
Yeah, okay. Well, is that are we good for today or this morning? Is that so? Okay. And if you want to, oh, well, we've been, what time is it? Because I don't know how long we've been.
It's 5 minutes to 11.
Okay, would you like to do a little, let's do a little meditation now. Okay, so we'll, as our method goes, so we're sitting here, we're sitting in here, we've had this lively conversation and hopefully beneficial and even inspirational in our life. And here we are in this room, this sunny room on this day together. And we're sitting here, we relax our bodies and breathe in and out a couple of times. And now, now let us address God by maybe the name that we prefer, the title, what it's something that's precious to us as we call God, and the title or the name that we want, and also if there's anything that's weighing on our heart, any preoccupation or something, any intention that we want to offer God here now, people we might want to pray for in their lives, and we bring that to God, and then now to give thanks to God, to give thanks for here to be here and share this fellowship, share this investigation of the life of prayer, and share the blessings that we've received in our life, and have a generous, gracious heart that appreciates the most simple things of life, just the most basic simple things, to be here, sheltered, protected, here in this unity of prayer and fellowship, and that we're here together, and we want to give thanks to God and praise the Lord, and give thanks that He is such a great God, such a good God that can take the worst things and make beautiful things out of them. He loves doing that, and He loves doing that within us. We just want to give thanks to God, and just let all that goodness, all that love embrace us here, embrace us in this very moment. As we let ourselves go, we know that He's there to receive us. We know that His love is there for us, and His love embraces us and takes us into His arms and nourishes us and frees us and makes us one with Him. Yeah, so Dobby came over. I told her it was understood she could come over at 11. So she came over to the feeding, so,
That's great.
yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank
So,
you.
And you're gonna meet again tonight at 5?
Yeah. So give me
And
one
then is
session.
that it, or are you doing one tomorrow morning, or today's it?
I think it'll be 2 days. You all have to leave anyway. Yeah, we don't- yeah, so yeah,
Marion.
today's gonna be the last one.
I mean, we would stay later.
No, I think,
Okay.
yeah. Is that, yeah, I think that's good. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
You can come over and have coffee. and talk.
After that's because we always talk after coffee, so if you wanna talk about that.
check underneath the rock form obstruction. Error number 3.